40 years ago, a guy named Chris was still a very young traveler. It so happened that he came to Alaska. The mysterious local nature attracted him. But his main goal was gold, which Chris mined there with a group of enthusiasts. Most of the time, they stayed in groups of a few people. Going out into the wild alone was dangerous, but it so happened the guy did go out while his companions stayed in the hut. Many of them had caught a cold and simply wanted to rest. Chris knew that it was dangerous, but still decided to go for a short outing. He didn't know at the time that instead of Jules, he'd come face to face with a predator. Chris was making his way through the snow. He was already 2 kilometers from the camp and moving slowly towards the riverbed, when suddenly a large dog caught his attention. He was surprised. What could a lonely dog be doing in the wild? Chris assumed that its owners might be somewhere near the animal, but behaved aggressively. Being young and inexperienced, the guy decided to go down the hill and see what was happening at a distance of about 20 meters. After getting a closer look at the animal, Chris froze. What looked like a big gray dog at first turned out to be a real, huge wild wolf. Having noticed the man, the animal bared its fangs and growled. Since the gold digger had no chance of escaping, he simply closed his eyes, but the animal didn't move. When he opened his eyes, the guy realized the wild animal was caught in a trap left out by poachers. Moreover, it wasn't a male wolf, but a nursing mother. The man realized the animal obviously needed help, but the she-wolf didn't want to let him come closer, and the man wasn't really too keen on the idea either. Chris's mouth was dry as he sweat just imagining yourself in his place. Alone in the wild, and if there were other wolves around, no one could help him. But could he leave the poor animal to die? Maybe someone else would. But Chris realized the wolf den might be somewhere near and the pups might still be alive. He only needed to find them and bring them to their mother. The paw prints went quite far. The guy was fighting himself, asking, "What am I doing?" Fear was taking over as he moved farther and farther away from the camp, following the footsteps. The guy had to walk several kilometers in the snow before he managed to find the den with the pups. When Chris was getting closer, the little pups got frightened as any other babies would and hid in the den at the sight of the big and scary person. But there was no time for hesitation. He took out a large bag he had on him and put the pups in it. The trip back took him about an hour, and all this time the pups whined and floundered in the bag and tried growling. Even before the man got to the mother wolf, he heard a large moan. Most likely the mother sensed the smell of the pups. The guy untied the bag with the little ones and the 4 pups rushed to their mother, whining. They immediately buried themselves in her stomach and began munching loudly. The mother wolf licked her children and watched cautiously what the traveler was doing. The guy tried to help the wolf out of the trap a few times, but she immediately began to growl every time she saw the man trying to get closer. Our hero had a little meat left, so he threw a few pieces to the wolf, but to his surprise she refused to eat it, probably suspecting some sort of catch. Chris sat there watching the family until late in the evening. After it got dark, he returned to his camp but didn't tell anyone about what happened. The next day, when everyone went to work, Chris decided to take more food and go back to the wolf. The gold digger saw that the meat was eaten and the mother was warming up her pups. This went on for several days. Every morning the young man would go to the animal and feed her, but she still continued to growl at him every day. The pups, however, began trusting the man on the 3rd day already and happily jumped around him and licked his hands. When the man would pet the pups, the mother watched them intently, and as soon as his hands would touch the little ones, she'd immediately call them over. She didn't trust the stranger. At one point, the guy looked up and noticed the mother wolf slightly wagged her tail. It was a victory. Chris got near the animal very slowly, barely breathing. He opened the trap, finally setting the mother free. She ran off for a few meters and called for her pups to join. The large family hid in the thick forest and Chris hadn't seen them again. A week later, the man returned home to Jersey. He'd already forgotten about the story, only sometimes telling it to his closest friends, though no one believed him. 5 years after these events took place, our hero started working for a fishing company and once again found himself in Alaska, not far from the same place. One day the man had to deliver a letter to the neighboring village. He left early in the morning on a snowmobile, but it broke down. He tried everything he could to start it again, but it just wouldn't work. It was frozen. The village was only a few kilometers away, but it was getting dark. 1 kilometer later, he saw a dark silhouette on his way. All the locals knew that being alone far from the village, especially after dark, was suicide. There was danger everywhere and nowhere to escape from a pack of wolves. Chris panicked as he realized and felt he was closely watched by a pack of predators. He saw how they skillfully surrounded him, forcing their prey into a circle, slowly closing in. He counted 5 large wolves in his head, and Chris was already saying his goodbyes. His heavy breathing and heartbeat were so strong that he couldn't even stand up and fell to his knees. One of the predators was approaching him. It stopped at a distance of a couple of meters but didn't rush to attack the man. As horrified as he was, Chris looked into the eyes of the wolf and recognized them. It was the same mother wolf. She was much older. Her fur had gotten dull, but it was definitely her. The animal tensed up, closely watching the man. Their eyes met for less than a minute, after which she wagged her tail a couple times and ran back into the forest, and the rest of the pack followed. This time the saved animal disappeared into the snow forever, and the traveler safely reached a village. It so happened that one day the man saved the lives of a wolf and her pups, and many years later the wolf paid him back.